Hello everybody, it's Sylvie. Welcome back to Tarot Magpie. I hope you're doing good. So today's video is firstly not super planned, so apologies in advance. And I'm not quite sure what I'm going to call this. This is kind of the cards I use to gauge the vibes of a tarot deck. It's like the cards I use as a litmus test for what a tarot deck is going to be like. I think I tend, this is just 5 cards that I've kind of picked some examples for, but as I think all of us who are collectors of tarot decks and spend a lot of time thinking about tarot, I tend to diverge from the most common or most frequent or most surface level opinion for the interpretations of some of these cards. So they are the ones I like to pull out in a new deck and pay a little bit of extra attention to kind of see how they read, no pun intended, and like try and get the general vibes of a deck. So none of these are like necessarily going to be deal breakers in a deck. It's just the cards that I'm interested in. I will explain as we go. So I've picked we've got the 7 of Swords, we've got 5 of Wands, we've got Death, the Lovers, and the 6 of Pentacles. So I think I'm going to start with Death because I think this is maybe like the most obvious one. Okay, so it took me a minute to decide how I was going to lay these out. So the way that I see Death is probably the common interpretation. I see Death as the end point of something. It's something coming to an end. It's painful. You don't necessarily want it to end. You might be trying to resist it ending, but it has to end. Death is a natural part of every process, and following death you get the kind of transmutation, you get the rebirth. These are actually all pretty good images of death I quite like. I couldn't seem to find, because it's one of those that really annoys me, I don't really have them in my deck. What I don't like is a death that focuses too much or focuses solely on the rebirth aspect, because I think that's a little bit more judgment. But also I think the point of the death card is it's coming to an end, you're not going to like it. Like, I think if we focus solely on the rebirth, transmutation aspect, transformation, that is kind of sugarcoating a little bit. So yeah, I just kind of pulled a few out. So this is the 5th Spirit Tarot here. And this I think is maybe the most gentle of this little selection that I've got, because it's showing, I do really like this though, because you've got the kind of generations. That is just a very normal natural part of life, is that, you know, as older generations die out, new generations come in, that kind of thing. You've also got the like butterflies and the snake, which I think hint at the transformation, rebirth kind of a thing, without being too in your face about it. You could probably, if you are a believer in ideas of like reincarnation and past lives, I think you could probably read that in this card as well. So yeah, that's the 5th Spirit Tarot, and I think this is maybe one of the more like gentle ones. I really enjoy this. This is the Lubanco Tarot, because I feel like it shows that transformation, but it's not a very fluffy and gentle transformation, and nor is, this is a fairly new deck in my collection. This is the Tarot of the Toiling Hands, and what I like are the key phrases on this deck. So this is the harbinger of glorious transmutation, and then you've got your death figure, you've got your horse, you've got your Scorpio. So these kind of, I feel like, focus on that transformation aspect, but not in a too like sugary way. This is the Crystal Visions Tarot. I've pulled this one a bunch recently, and again, like this is a very pretty death card, but because we've got like the death figure, we've got this grave, like it conjures up the death part of death. Does that make sense? But is still quite like gentle about it. I also, again, I like the butterflies. I like the transformation that they symbolize. I'm gonna be honest, I don't quite remember why I pulled this one out. And this is from the Tarot of the Crystal World. I think this is just an example of a death card that's like a spin on the Rider-Waite-Smith and isn't kind of leaning too heavily in any direction. So this is like, when I'm flicking through a deck, this kind of death card, I'm like, this is fine. I don't especially love this, but I don't dislike this. You know, we've got our skeletal figure on a horse. In this example, they're carrying a person, so you can picture that as like carrying someone from their life through to whatever's next. And then this is another one that like is a very beautiful example of not my favorite depiction of death. Again, the snake is a very common theme. We've got like the snake is like that rebirth, that transformation. We've got our little skull. Like, it's a pretty death card. This one doesn't do that much for me. Like I said, none of these like would be deal breakers for me on like an individual card level. This is just kind of like a bit of the range of some of the death cards in my collection. Okay, next up for the lovers, because I historically have a bit of beef with the lovers card, for no particular reason. So this is my selection of lovers cards. These are all queer, which I love, but they all do something slightly different. So again, this is the Tarot of the Crystal World, and this is a version of my least favourite kind of lovers card, where it just shows a couple in some kind of entanglement. I like this one because it's queer, so it gets a pass. This is the Fyodor Pavlov. And again, we love it because it's queer. But what I like about this, so the thing that I see in the lovers is the choice to make a commitment. And because we've got this hand fasting, I feel like that really visualizes that commitment. So I really enjoy it. And we've also got like the apple as a nod to the like Adam and Eve themes in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck that I enjoy. And our figure on the left here is holding an arrow. So I feel like that's also a nod to the Cupid angel figure in the Marseille Tarot. So I really like those details, but it's specifically a way of showing this like commitment and this choice that's being made within a kind of like, oh, it's a couple sort of a lover's card. This one I love. This is from the Lebanco Tarot, and I think this as a card that is a litmus test for a deck, I feel like this is a really good one. This kind of tells you what the deck is all about. Like, it's queer, it's intense. I like how it's showing, like, if you see the lovers as a choice, it's a choice that is kind of all-consuming, and like changes you, and I really enjoy that. And then this is the Fifth Spirit again, and I think this is just such a beautiful lovers card. I think, is this meant to represent the author? I can't remember, but it's a, do you know what, I haven't actually read the guidebook for this recently, but I feel like you can either see this as like somebody with their self, so it's like self-love, or like I like to see this as like somebody's like shadow self, and you're kind of making peace with your shadow self. And again, like you've got the apples, which are a bit of a nod to the original, as well as this like wings in the background here to the Marseille, and the knot here, which again is like that, like tying the knot kind of commitment. And again, I love it because it's queer. It's queer and trans, and we love a deck with like binders and top surgery scars and all that. So yeah, the lovers is one that it took me a while to come around to, just like as a card, because so often the interpretations I saw were like, oh, it's about romantic love, it's about a partnership, it's about a couple, and I'm like, that has limited relevance in a reading. So these are some lovers cards that I really enjoy, even though most of them are depicting that kind of more common perception of like a romantic couple. Okay, and now we have some minors. This is the Five of Wands, and this I think is kind of a fun one. Do you know what, we'll do them like this, and then I can zoom in a bit. So I think this is a kind of a fun one. So I see the Five of Wands as like competition or non-serious disagreement. You know, it's not a fight, it's not a battle, it's an argument that maybe has got a bit out of hand. It's a bit of like a friendly debate, it's a bit of a discussment, you know? So I really like this, again, from the Tarot of the Toiling Hands. Again, for the key phrase, the Clamouring Horde. I think that is such a good description of the Five of Wands, and I adore these key phrases throughout this deck, actually. But I think this is such a good description of the Five of Wands, because the Clamouring Horde, first of all, excellent word, clamouring, good word, but it's not like aggressive, it's not violence, it's like, it's noisy, and that's kind of what the Five of Wands is. The Five of Wands is like a noisy card, there's a lot going on, but it's not necessarily like dramatic and awful. This is the Darkwood Tarot, and I like this because you've got these little like bat things, and it does just seem like they're kind of having a bit of an argument. Like there's a bit of competition, or there's some kind of like play fighting almost that's going on, and I feel like that's been depicted really well here, and that really is what the Five of Wands is to me. Again, we've got the Tarot of the Crystal World. I think this is a fabulous Five of Wands, and like you could see this as more violent, because like at first glance it's like everyone is bullying this person, but then you're like, no, this person is punching this person, but then everybody else is either also trying to get a punch in on somebody else, or maybe holding this figure back from this one. So again, it's that kind of like clamoring noisiness, like everybody is pulling in different directions, there's no cooperation going on here. And then again, the Fifth Spirit, because I love this deck. This is, I think, quite an interesting take on the Five of Wands. You've got all these different, you assume all these different methods of bashing in a wasp's nest, which is, anyone with a grain of common sense would know that's not a smart move to make, that you're going to end up all running in different directions and stung and generally a bit unhappy. But it's not, you know, touch wood, as long as nobody's allergic, it's not a life or death situation, it's just a badly thought through idea, which I think, again, is a good representation of the Five of Wands. Okay, Six of Pentacles. This is a really good one, I think. Oh, I'm not going to be able to fit these in again. But yeah, this is a really, we'll move my mug. What did I say this was? This is the Six of Pentacles. I hope I didn't say five. Okay, so the Six of Pentacles. The Fifth Spirit here in the center actually is an example of the kind of Six of Pentacles I don't like. I don't like a Six of Pentacles that implies it's all about sharing and generosity, because that is a little bit one way to me. It's a little bit, I've said this before, feels a bit virtue signally. It's not my favorite kind of Six of Pentacles. And so here you can see there's 6 items that are all being put in a donations bin. And I just think that's quite a flat reading of the Six of Pentacles. I think all the sixes actually, but especially the Six of Pentacles, have kind of an imbalance in them, and I don't think this does a good job of actually visualizing that imbalance. Whereas this is the Guardian of the Night Tarot. This was the card that made me realize how good this deck was. This is really visualizing that kind of imbalance of power, and I think I must have highlighted this one in my Practical Pentacles video that I did. They were a series of videos in response to Crescent Dreams Tarot, I hope, talking about my favourite cards from each of the minor suits. But anyway, so this one shows here you've got this bird who sits on a bison and pecks at the ticks, I think it is. But if there are no ticks, they kind of just peck at the bison. So it's that kind of reciprocity, but gone wrong. It's that, like, it's out of balance. Do you know what I mean? So I think this is my favourite kind of Six of Pentacles, whereas this is my least favourite kind of Six of Pentacles. This is the Levanko Tarot again, and I really enjoy this because it looks at first like, oh, you know, maybe the figure whose hands are here is sharing their wealth to the figures who are below them. So it's like, oh, that's like charitable, but then it's the way that these hands below appear to be like grasping. I think it just lends a little bit of a it feels like a little bit more desperate. These figures that are on the receiving end feel a little bit more desperate, and that kind of implicitly puts whoever's doing the giving, it indicates the position of power that they've got. Like they're choosing to share their resources with these people who are in need. Do you know what I mean? So again, like the La Banca Tarot I think is one of my favorites. This one I think I also spoke about in my Practical Pentacles video. This is from the Darkwood Tarot again, and this is like, I think these are twins, and one is signing something and the other is receiving gold, and it's that kind of message of like, be careful. It's a message to read the terms and conditions. It's a message to like, be careful what you're giving up to receive what's being promised to you. Like, it's that potential for a power imbalance. It's that potential for an abuse of a power imbalance. It's like, is this a fair contract or not, you know? Like, it's not just like sharing, it's also like giving something away with the implied, or in this case, legally binding understanding that you'll get something in return. And then what haven't we mentioned? The Six of Pentacles from the Tarot of the Crystal World, yet again. This one is just interesting to me. And in terms of like, cards I look at to gauge the vibes of a deck, this is very much not a traditional Six of Pentacles. Instead of somebody, instead of a presumed rich person giving money to presumed poor people, you've got this figure as like shepherding this other figure, and it feels a bit more Five of Pentacles to me actually. It's more like the resolution of the Five of Pentacles. And I just think that's a really interesting take, because it makes sense narratively with the suit that you'd have the Six being the resolution to the Five of Pentacles more directly. And I think this is a good kind of vibe test of the deck, because there's a lot of this in the deck. There's a lot of like different takes on it. It's far from a Rider-Waite-Smith clone, and that is one of the reasons I really enjoy it. And I like, again, like these selections of cards, I like when decks do something different, and this is something different. I'm trying to strike a balance between rambling and rushing. And finally we have the Seven of Swords. That looks better, doesn't it? So the Seven of Swords is one that I am keen on, because I think the interpretation of a thief, a trickster, a liar is too flat, it's too one-sided. And I like cards that leave room for multiple sides to the story, because I think that's one of like the key things to keep in mind about the Seven of Swords, is that there's more than one side to every story. You think you see a guy stealing 5 swords, but maybe they were his to start with, maybe he's stealing them back, maybe he's taking them from these people so that these people can't do damage. There's myriad reasons. Anyways, this here is my beloved Terra Volatile. This is the Seven of Swords from the Terra Volatile. I definitely spoke about this in my Severe Swords video, and I enjoy this because it's a fox, not a person doing the stealing, so you can't automatically go to, oh, this person's a thief and a liar and can't be trusted, because a fox isn't going to steal a sword for the same reason that a person is. So I really enjoy this interpretation. Here we have the Fifth Spirit once more. I think the Fifth Spirit has shown up in every card. I love this deck. I think it's fabulous. But yeah, first of all, we've got a magpie, and as Tarot Magpie is my channel name, I had to love this. But again, it's like, well, animals don't steal for the same reasons people do. You can't assign malicious intent to an animal the way you would with a person, so it forces you to kind of pause and consider a bit more deeply. And of course, magpies are known for taking shiny things because we assume they like them and they want to. So it's not kind, but it's not malicious. So yeah, I just think that's just an interesting take. And then here is the Crystal Visions Tarot, and I am noting that I like Sevens of Swords that have animals in, because we've got our figure here with 2 swords, and then we've got crows or ravens have the other 5 swords. So usually it's a guy stealing 5 swords, leaving 2 behind. Here we've got these birds have taken 5 swords, and this person's got 2. And again, it's just a bit of a different perspective. because again, you can't assume the same intentions from crows and ravens as you can from people. And again, it's like, well, are they taking these swords from this person? Are they bringing these swords to this person? This person also has wings, so are they in cahoots with the birds? Who can tell? But it's, again, I think the message is like, oh, nothing is that straightforward. There's multiple sides to every story. So yes, that is my Seven of Swords. These are not the only cards I kind of do this with. Whenever I look through a deck, there's definitely a few more that I pay close attention to, like the Hierophant is one, the Empress is one, the Seven of Cups is also one, but I just kind of picked a handful for this video, and it's getting very dark outside, it's getting very gloomy, so I think it's a good job I'm stopping this video here. But yes, let me know if this was interesting. I'm sure that this is something that we probably all do, and I just had never really thought about it before, so it was very interesting to kind of realise that there are some cards that I look to kind of get the energy of a deck from, and this is definitely a handful of them. So like you saw, like the Crystal World popped up in all of them, and most of them are like interesting takes. The Fifth Spirit popped up in all of them, and I quite like, for the most part, I like the Fifth Spirit's takes on these cards, Six of Pentacles notwithstanding, and so like there's a good chance I'm going to like the vibes of the whole deck, which in this case I do. I didn't go through my whole collection for this, I just kind of picked out a selection of decks and picked some of the cards. So yes, I'm going to leave it there. Please do let me know what you thought of this, and let me know what your cards are that you kind of vibe check a deck with. No idea what I'm going to call this video. I hope I come up with something interesting. So yes, thank you very much for watching and for spending some time with me. I do hope that you've enjoyed. Please give me a like if you liked it, and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.